They say growing old with someone is life's quiet reward. But what if the very person you've trusted for decades, the one who once cheered your every achievement, begins to speak to you as if you were incapable, fragile, or worse, irrelevant? I've seen it too many times, and believe me, it doesn't take screaming matches or slammed doors to unravel a lifetime of partnership. Sometimes, it's just a gentle voice saying, "Let me do that. You'll mess it up," that echoes loudest in the silence of your soul. And the truth is, these small dismissals don't just bruise your pride. They carve into your identity, especially at a time in life when your value is measured not by physical strength, but by wisdom earned through living. I remember working with a man named Richard, a retired carpenter with a spine still straight and a mind still sharp. His hands had crafted hundreds of pieces over the years, tables that held family dinners, shelves lined with his daughter's childhood books. But then came the comments. "You're going to hurt yourself," his wife would say, pulling the tools from his hand. "Your hands are too shaky now." It started with love, or so it seemed, but it ended with Richard no longer entering his workshop. Not because he couldn't, but because someone he trusted deeply had convinced him he shouldn't. Now here's the part many don't talk about. This kind of quiet erosion of confidence doesn't just affect hobbies. According to research from the National Institute on Aging, older adults who are treated as less capable than they are often experience faster cognitive decline. That's not just a feeling, it's a physiological response to losing agency. When others stop expecting you to participate fully, you start to disengage, muscles weaken, routines fade, and even your memory can dull. Not from age, but from the absence of being needed. Here's what I want you to know. Concern is not the same as condescension. There's a difference between offering help and removing someone's dignity. You can love someone and still hold space for their strength. In fact, real love does exactly that. So if you've started to hear these little jabs wrapped in soft tones phrases like, "You don't need to bother," or "I'll just take care of it," pause. Take a breath. Ask yourself, is this love protecting me, or is it quietly shrinking me? And if you're the one saying those things, even out of worry, remember this: your partner doesn't need saving. They need seeing. Seeing for who they are, not who you fear they're becoming. We don't outgrow the need to feel useful, respected, and trusted. In fact, those needs grow stronger with age, not weaker. One small act you can try today? Invite your spouse back into something you used to enjoy together. Let them lead, even if their hands move slower. Let them decide, even if you do it differently. Dignity isn't earned by being perfect. It's honored by being seen as whole. What I've found, after all these years in practice, is that people don't forget how you made them feel. And when those feelings are of trust, respect, and belief in their worth, they hold on to that forever. But if you let your words slowly carve away at their confidence, one quiet sentence at a time, what you're left with isn't peace, it's a silence too deep to heal. I once believed that the quiet years of marriage, those decades after the kids have grown and the career has settled, would be filled with peace, with soft mornings and warm routines. But then I started hearing something unsettling in my conversations with older patients. It wasn't anger or abuse in the way we typically imagine. No, it was quieter and somehow more corrosive. It was the simple, sharp suggestion that maybe, just maybe, one of them should leave. And not during some monumental crisis, but during a disagreement as trivial as what to buy for dinner. You see, when a partner begins to say things like, "Maybe I should just move out," or "If you keep doing this, I'm gone," it changes the entire emotional climate of the home. At first, you might laugh it off, thinking it's just frustration talking. But over time, those words settle into the back of your mind like a storm cloud that never quite lifts. And that storm? It's not just emotional. Studies published in the Journal of Aging and Mental Health have shown that repeated emotional threats, even subtle ones, can lead to increased anxiety, disrupted sleep, and even elevated blood pressure in seniors. Not because of the threat itself, but because of what it symbolizes, the idea that love is now conditional. I knew a woman once. Her name was Carol, 74, married for over 50 years. Her husband had never raised a hand, never even shouted. But whenever they disagreed about money, about where to spend the holidays, he would look at her and say, "Maybe we're just too different now." Those words, seemingly small, started to haunt her. She stopped bringing up ideas, stopped expressing needs, and slowly, she stopped feeling like she belonged in her own marriage. That's not a home. That's walking on eggshells, where you should be walking hand in hand. Now, let me be clear. Every couple disagrees. That's not the problem. In fact, friction is a sign that two people still care enough to be honest. The real danger lies in using the threat of leaving as a lever to win, to control, to silence. That's not love. That's emotional blackmail, wrapped in the robe of long-term companionship. And for older adults, where the fear of starting over or being alone can be overwhelming, this tactic becomes especially cruel. What should you do if you recognize this in your relationship? Start by naming it. Say, "When you mention leaving over small things, it makes me feel unsafe and unloved." You don't have to make accusations, but you do have to protect your peace. Because here's the truth I've learned in all my years sitting with couples. Commitment is not proven by staying through the good times. It's proven by refusing to weaponize the bad times. And if you're the one who has used those words, even in passing, pause and ask yourself why. Are you truly feeling disconnected? Or are you using fear to get your way? Either way, it's worth examining. Relationships, especially in later life, should be sanctuaries, places where disagreements are a part of growth, not threats to your survival. Tonight, just try this one thing. The next time a disagreement bubbles up, instead of reaching for the escape hatch, reach for understanding. Say, "I hear you. Let's figure this out together." You might be surprised at how much softer everything feels when no one's waiting for the other shoe to drop. Because at the end of a long life, we don't remember who won the argument about the thermostat. We remember whether we felt safe enough to be ourselves, even when things weren't perfect. What if I told you that the most dangerous symptom in aging isn't pain, or weakness, or even forgetfulness, it's being ignored? I've sat beside too many older adults who told me the same story. I mentioned it, but my spouse said I was just being dramatic. And they believed it. They held their concerns in, convinced themselves it would pass. And sometimes it didn't. Because when the person you trust the most tells you that what you're feeling isn't real, it doesn't just hurt, it silences you. And that silence can be deadly. You see, pain in older adults often whispers instead of shouts. A little pressure in the chest, a few dizzy spells, a tightness in the back of the neck. These aren't cries for attention. They're the body's quiet alarms. But when those alarms are brushed aside, called nagging, overreacting, or just part of getting old, we stop ringing them. That's how problems go from manageable to irreversible. According to the CDC, nearly 1 in 3 seniors delay medical attention because they fear being dismissed or misunderstood. And in couples, especially long-term ones, the dynamic can be even trickier. You love this person. You trust their judgment. So if they say it's nothing, maybe it really is nothing until it's not. I remember working with a man named Henry, 82, strong as an oak and proud of it. He started waking up with tightness in his chest and shortness of breath after climbing stairs. His wife, trying to comfort him, said, "You're always worried about something. Don't stress yourself." So he didn't. He stopped talking about it. 2 weeks later, he collapsed in their kitchen from a silent heart attack. He survived, but only just, and the guilt she carried was heavier than the event itself. I thought I was calming him. she said. But I muted the only warning he gave me. This isn't about blame. It's about awareness. Dismissing your partner's health concerns, even with the kindest intent, sends a message. Your experience doesn't matter. And that message doesn't stay in the body. It seeps into the spirit. The partner begins to feel invisible, uncertain, and worst of all, alone in their own body. Now, I understand. Sometimes we say these things to comfort. We don't want to see the people we love suffer, so we downplay it, hoping it'll go away. But the truth is, real comfort comes not from denial, but from listening, from looking them in the eye and saying, "I believe you. Let's check it out together." If you've been on the receiving end of this kind of dismissal, let me tell you this. Your body knows things. You've lived long enough to recognize when something's off. Don't let politeness override instinct. If your spouse brushes it off, that doesn't mean you have to. Speak up again. Be louder. Bring it to your doctor. Your health is not a nuisance. It's your life. And if you're the one who tends to minimize pause for a moment, next time your partner mentions a pain or a strange symptom, try responding with, "Let's write that down and ask the doctor." It's a small sentence, but it tells them, "I hear you. I'm with you. You matter." Because aging should never mean disappearing. Not from your own body, and certainly not from the eyes of the one who promised to walk beside you. There's a kind of silence that doesn't come from peace, but from the quiet retreat of someone who's been dismissed too many times. I've seen it happen in long marriages, the kind where two people have built entire decades side by side, only for one to slowly lose their voice in the relationship. And the cruelest part? It rarely starts with shouting. It starts with phrases like, "That's not a good idea," or "You always choose wrong," slipped into dinner conversations or Sunday plans. If you've ever felt that your opinion didn't matter, not because it was wrong, but because it was yours, you know the sting I'm talking about. As we age, we may lose some physical strength, but we gain something even more valuable: clarity. We've faced challenges, made hard calls, learned from our missteps. That lived experience should make our voices louder, not quieter. But when a spouse repeatedly undermines your decisions, whether about dinner, finances, or how to handle family matters, it sends a deeper message. You no longer have the right to lead. And that message, over time, is devastating. Research from the American Psychological Association has shown that older adults who feel consistently disempowered in decision-making are at higher risk for depression and social withdrawal. Why? Because autonomy isn't a luxury, it's a psychological need. When someone robs you of it even subtly, it creates a fracture in your sense of self. And in a marriage, that fracture can feel like a betrayal. I think of Margaret, 77, once the planner of every family vacation. She loved it, the maps, the lists, the anticipation. But as the years passed, her husband began to sigh at her ideas. "That's too complicated. You always forget something." Bit by bit, she stopped suggesting. "The last time I saw her, she told me she hadn't planned a single trip in 5 years. I just let him decide," she said, smiling politely, but her eyes said something else. She hadn't lost interest. She'd lost permission. Here's what we don't always realize. Undermining doesn't always sound cruel. Sometimes it wears the mask of efficiency. "Let me handle it. It's faster." But faster doesn't mean better, not when it comes at the cost of dignity. In a healthy partnership, decisions don't have to be perfect. They have to be shared. So what can you do if you're in this pattern? Start by reclaiming a small space. Pick one area: meals, shopping, holiday cards, and make a choice. Share it confidently. If your partner pushes back, don't fight. Simply say, "This is important to me. I want us to make this call together." It's not about being right. It's about being respected. And if you're the one who tends to override, ask yourself, are you doing it out of habit or fear of letting go? Letting your partner lead in small ways, won't weaken your bond. It will strengthen their trust in themselves and in you. Tonight, try this small action. Ask your spouse what they'd like to decide this week and follow through. It could be what movie to watch or where to go for lunch. The point isn't the outcome. The point is restoring the balance, so neither of you disappears into the other. Because in the end, love isn't about who chooses best. It's about making space for each other to choose it all. Of all the things that can unravel a long marriage, it's not always the big betrayals that leave the deepest cuts. Sometimes, it's just a single sentence casually dropped over morning coffee or in the middle of a tired argument that plants a seed of separation. Maybe you'd be happier without me. You'd probably have a better life if we weren't together. They sound almost noble, like self-sacrifice. But what they really are is emotional exit talk. And over time, those words don't just shake the foundation of a relationship, they rot it from within. Let me tell you something most people don't realize until it's too late. When your partner starts suggesting either directly or through small comments that you'd be better off alone, they're not just expressing insecurity. They're opening a door, one word at a time, to the idea that this union, this shared life, might no longer be worth fighting for. And once that door is cracked, it's hard to close. What makes this even more devastating is the subtlety. These statements often come wrapped in a cloak of care. I don't want to hold you back. I feel like I'm a burden. And yet, the message is the same. You might be happier if I were gone. According to research from the Institute for Family Studies, couples who use distancing language during conflict, especially after the age of 60, report significantly lower marital satisfaction and emotional closeness. Why? Because these statements, even when veiled as selflessness, feel like rejection. And rejection, when it comes from the person who vowed to stand by you, cuts deeper than silence. I remember Tom and Elaine, married for over 55 years. Tom began saying, almost jokingly, "I'm just slowing you down these days." Elaine laughed the first few times, but then he said it during a doctor's visit and later during a walk in the park. Eventually, she stopped suggesting outings altogether. He made me feel like I was dragging him through life, she told me. What she didn't say, but I could see in her eyes, was that she felt abandoned emotionally, if not physically. These phrases, no matter how softly spoken, carry an undertow of doubt. They whisper, "We're drifting." And even if you don't want to leave, hearing them repeatedly can make you start to imagine what being apart might look like. That imagination, if left unchecked, becomes a plan. And that plan becomes distance, then silence, then absence. So what should you do if these words have entered your home? If you're hearing them, don't brush them off. Don't just reassure or redirect. Pause and respond with clarity. When you say that, it makes me feel like you're already halfway out the door. Is that how you feel? Invite honesty, but demand presence. You deserve to know whether those words are a cry for help or a quiet goodbye. And if you're the one saying them, especially if you think you're protecting your spouse, ask yourself this: are you offering freedom or are you testing their loyalty? Because real love isn't about imagining who'd be better off. It's about choosing to be better together. Tonight, try this instead. Tell your partner one reason you're glad they're still by your side. Just one sentence of connection can silence 100 doubts. Remind them and yourself that love, especially in later life, is not about who's the strongest or fastest or least needy. It's about who's still choosing to show up. Because there's nothing noble about disappearing from someone's life while still sitting at their table. I've been sitting with people for over 40 years across hospital beds, in living rooms, and during long walks around quiet neighborhoods. And if there's one truth that repeats itself over and over again, it's this: the words we say in love matter just as much as the words we withhold. Especially as we grow older. We think that because we've lived through so much together, raising kids, losing friends, celebrating milestones, our relationships are immune to harm. But the truth is, time doesn't make us invincible. It makes us tender. Softer in places we once were strong. More vulnerable in the spaces where we used to be busy. So when a partner begins to use words that diminish, dismiss, or destabilize, the impact isn't small. It cuts to the core. Because at this stage of life, what we crave most isn't grand romance or dramatic gestures. It's respect, steadiness, knowing that the person beside us still sees us not as a fading version of who we were, but as the full human we still are. If anything I've said today stirred something in you, I want you to remember this. You are not asking for too much when you ask to be spoken to with kindness. You are not too sensitive for needing your choices, your body, your voice to be honored. And if you've been the one speaking those careless words, it's not too late. One apology, one new habit, one quiet decision to listen better, that's all it takes to turn the tide. I'll leave you with this. The years ahead, however many remain, are yours to shape. You deserve relationships that lift you, not shrink you. Conversations that nourish, not drain. A home that feels like safety, not a place you tiptoe around. And if you're still here, listening, I'd love to hear from you. What's one phrase that stuck with you, good or bad, in your own relationship? Leave it in the comments below. You might be surprised how many others say, "Me too." Because healing doesn't always start in the doctor's office. Sometimes it begins with a single honest sentence and a community brave enough to share it.